especially as we, creatives share stuff on social media, that we need to separate our success on social media with our personal worth.
Oh, but all right. So, welcome to Writing Our Own Story, Small Business Life at StoryForge. This is part of our guest appearances series. My name is Tim. I will be your host today. And if you are not familiar with StoryForge, StoryForge is a reading and writing platform that is hoping to change the publishing industry. The world's kind of a scary place out there right now, so we are accepting of people of all races, backgrounds, genders, sexualities, identities. We hope to provide a safe place for you to read, write, edit, and build a community. If you are not a member, you can sign up today at storyforge.com. If you use the referral code podcast, you get a free 50 quills, which is our on-platform currency to help you decorate your library. Joining me today is Beatrice, our Senior Director of Marketing, and our special guest today is Glen Weatherhead of Creative Writing Wizard. His website, The Creative Writing Wizard, is focused on shining a light on indie authors and their works, building a community of supportive creatives, sharing and encouraging motivation, and providing practical guides and resources for really all stage of your author journey. So, Glenn, appreciate you joining us today. Welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
So let's just start at the beginning. Where did the idea for the creative writing wizard come from?
Yeah, it's a good question. About a little bit over a year ago, I set out to build a social platform for myself. I'm an author as well. And I said to myself, I want to build a platform, gain some followers so that eventually when I release my book, I have some people to potentially read it. That's kind of the the way back when or origin. But as time progressed, I started connecting with more authors. I started to hear the struggles that they're going through. And I thought, I have a website, maybe I can do something about it. So over time, I've done more into that space of supporting authors, specifically even indie authors, because I feel like there's a lot of need out there
Hmm.
um, for indie authors to be highlighted, because I feel like um, there's a lot of negativity that kind of comes with that terminology of like the indie author for some reason has like a negative slant to it. But having read, a number of indie authors now, I really can't tell the difference between indie and traditional published.
Hmm.
When they've, taken the time, they've written their book, they want to share their story. So I want to do what I can to help them in that process and to help them to be seen, because I think that's kind of one of the major struggles that I've heard, time and time again is getting their book out to people and getting seen. So yeah, that's kind of a nugget of what I'm trying to do. I am still working on my own book, but I also wanted to make sure that um, I am able to help other people along the way too.
Well, that's awesome. So why do you think that the term indie is such like I mean, it's almost like a bad word. Like you don't want to be known as an indie author. Like why do people believe that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is interesting because, as you say, like, it seems to have this negative slant, but when you talk about like indie musician or indie artist, there isn't that negative connotation, at least in society. It doesn't seem like that. But for whatever reason, whenever you start saying indie author, it's like somehow it's like sub quality, like subpar. Oh, they couldn't make it in the
Hmm.
traditional industry, so then they kind of had to go self-published. But I talked to an author on the last episode of my podcast who did both. She traditionally published and she self-published. And there's a lot of benefits to self-publishing. And having read both of her books, both the traditional and the self-publish, I didn't really see a difference in quality. And so as a reader, I experienced both books. I enjoyed both books. I think people assume that, um, and maybe this is overgeneralization, but it seems like people assume that if someone self-publishes, that they don't put the same amount of work into it. And I mean, certainly you can, publish something with, your first draft, just throw it on the internet. But a lot of the authors that I talk to spend like hundreds of hours refining their book. They
Hmm.
pay editors, they pay cover artists. They do a lot of that self-funding themselves, and then they have like a really great book at the end. So yeah, it's too bad. So hopefully, with work that, I'm doing and others like me, we're able to highlight that these are good authors and they're good books and people should check them
Yeah.
out.
I it's actually funny you say that. The episode of the podcast we recorded before this, we actually talked to an author who she traditionally published her first book and is going to independently publish her second book. And she made the point that when she independently publishes, she has so much more freedom. You're getting more of the story that the author intends because you don't have the corporate editors that are trying to just, make it into the next Hunger Games or next Divergence or next big thing that whatever's popular, you're getting more of the true essence of the actual story. Um, and I would say and I mean you have more experience with this than I do, but I would say as an independent author, you actually have the freedom and ability to take more chances with what you write. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's kind of a double-edged sword on that front where you have the creative freedom. You can make
Hmm.
pretty much whatever choice you want to do, as long as there's, I mean, there's some rules and content moderation in some of the publishing websites. For the most part, you can write pretty much whatever you want, put whatever art you want as a self-publish. In traditional publish, there's very much a refining process. They provide you a cover, and then you might have feedback, you might not. There's a lot less control on that front. But the balance then becomes, do you want to have that choice or not?
Hmm.
So some people actually do prefer traditional published because they don't want the added pressure of, oh, I don't know if this cover is going to be good enough, or they don't have the finances to pay for an editor.
Hmm.
So they'll have it traditionally published. But yeah, self-publishing, definitely being able to put in whatever you want. I remember someone on Instagram, and I'm blanking on their name, but they said something to the effect of, I wanted to put a shirtless elf on my cover, and so I did. And that's the joy of self-publishing. I can do what I want.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, using like my library app, there's a lot of books like that with the shirtless elf out there. So, someone's doing it and someone's doing it correctly. Um, but, is there a struggle to build so you're trying to build this community, supportive of indie authors. What are the challenges of that? Like what roadblocks do you face? Because like you said, there are some people that don't really want to be identified as an indie author. What are the challenges you're facing in building this community? Because you're right, we should be supporting each other.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the phrase that I've heard um, enough times that I feel like it's a good one to repeat is a rising tide lifts all boats. I really believe that. It's not a competition, like I think there's sometimes in our heads that we're competing against other authors, but
Hmm.
really we're not. That we are in this together to some degree. As far as the challenges, I think one of the challenges that I've been, going through is there's a lot of fake people out there or
Hmm.
fake accounts out there.
Hmm.
So when I'm trying to help authors, there's a lot of like, I have to build up a lot of trust to be able to say, hey, I am actually one of the legit ones. I do want to help you. I'm not here to take anything from you. I just want to help. And getting to that point sometimes is a bit of a trick because, and I've even seen it myself of, bots or, scammers are DMing me and saying, oh, I can promote your book. And
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, no, you can't. So I think that's probably a big challenge that I face, especially on social media and like AI, how the bots are just pretty
Yeah.
rampant out there.
We get those emails too, like our corporate like help at StoryForge, like, hey, we see you have a book. We'd like to help you promote it. Like, we we don't have a book. Like, what are you doing? Like, did you do anything?
It's
Uh,
really funny because we're getting them in the StoryForge Instagram account too, which is like literally we are a writing platform. Your book looks great.
Yeah.
StoryForge. I can read it and then put it in my it's like, bro, at least do market research. At least
hmm.
Oh,
have your
totally.
AI do research.
Yeah, they'll try to put my quote unquote first name like I'm on Twitter slash X
Hello,
and
creative.
yeah, hello creative. That's what they'll say, and I'm like, yeah, no, you lost me.
Yeah. I mean, I know they build those pretty quick, but a little effort, like if I'm gonna be
Yeah.
tricked, like put some effort into it so like I don't feel as bad if you do trick me. But you know, um and you mentioned the prevalence of AI in the writing community now, like and it's a very polarizing topic. You have people who are just pumping out AI books. You have people who are using it for like kind of positioning tools. You have people using it for editing. Um, do you think all in all, like this is like the influx of AI has been beneficial? Do you think we're kind of still in the standpoint, or is AI kind of harming the publishing industry? Because at StoryForge we stand, we're pro human creativity. We're kind of we're basically anti Gen AI. Um, but to each their own. So I guess where do you think this is taking the publishing industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's probably part of, one of the key areas of why I think it's so important to support indie authors. Is with traditional publish, they have a long process that's, I would say, fairly difficult. If even if you did try to AI generate
Hmm.
your manuscript, it would be fairly difficult to get that to go through the traditional publish route because at so many points you have to revise what you're doing based on their feedback and maintain your tone and voice, which is fairly challenging to do with the tools out today. I mean, maybe one day we'll get there
Hmm.
and they'll have a problem too. But the self-publishing side, yeah, it's a huge challenge. And even with like big sites like Amazon, you can go on and search for certain books. And if you're not paying close enough attention, you will buy an AI generated book.
Ooh.
And so like the one example that was the most egregious was like a book that was about picking plants and like cooking with them. And it was 100% AI generated. So
I
like
Oh.
saw
all
the
the
same
images were
book.
yeah, and it's brutal. So like if you pick up a book and you read it and it's like a fiction story that you wasted your time, but like this was a book that people actually tried to do what it said and got sick from it, and it's like that's the oh my gosh, I can't believe that's happening. But
Uh,
to your question around authors and the impact on the industry, yeah, I'd say indie authors have it especially hard right now because like we don't have the same level of scrutiny that goes through traditional publishing. And so I think a lot of people are assuming that people are using these tools. And some people are, some people aren't. I'd say majority probably aren't. But yeah, it does make it difficult because then you have to try even harder to say, no, I actually wrote this.
Hmm.
And I've had relatives that talk about my book and jokingly they'll say, "Oh yeah, did you have ChatGPT write it?" And I'm like, "No, no, I didn't. I wrote it myself."
Yeah.
It's like
We
that's tough.
we have a couple people who like in our Discord and stuff, they're working on their books and like they've had art created for covers and whatnot. And like people have just accused them of like, oh, this is AI generated art. Why didn't you get like an actual artist? And they're like, no, this is real. Like, no, that's AI generated. And like, no, we have like the time lapse of the person drawing it. It's real. And it's just it feels like it's just gonna quickly become kind of a witch hunt of, did you write this AI? Did you generate this with AI? Is it picture AI? Um, I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. Like I think most of us stand on kind of the idea that AI can be a cool tool, but it's the people who use it that make it so dangerous.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, go
definitely.
ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think you say it right of like it is a tool and it's how we use it. Um, and I think there's opinions all across the board, and I'm sure I upset people already about my stance on AI and whatnot. But I think at the heart of it is I hope that people continue to create because it's
Hmm.
fun to create. It's like part of our expression of humanity is to be able to make something out of our heads and imagine these worlds. And so, people bypass that to try and get to some end. But I think the kind of the gray area is these like assisting and editing tools where it's like it's not really generating it. It is helping you, but
Hmm.
then how much help is it doing anyway? I feel like that's a whole
Yeah.
subject in and of itself, but
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a whole
it's
separate
tough.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you do it right, it can be very useful as long as it's not scraping and learning and all that jazz. But that's definitely a different conversation. But back to the creative writing wizard. You find and you highlight these authors. How do you find them? Do you just scroll through social media? Do they find you? Walk us through how you find who you're going to promote and decide why you're going to promote them.
Yeah, I would say I don't really have any official ways. I'm very much a, organic growth through social media kind of
Nice.
process, I guess. I do have it in my mind to try and push to get more people in, but even without really advertising, I've supported I think at this point over 250, almost 300 authors as they've been releasing their books.
Oh, hell yeah.
Um, which is it's really cool to be a part of that. And I want to emphasize that it's their books. I have no part in their writing process, but it's cool to be alongside them as they're publishing and celebrate with them. But yeah, as far as how I go about it, usually it's you know sharing on Threads. Threads is probably one of the bigger ones. I do, go on X or Twitter, depending on
Hmm.
how you want to call it that, and just, put out the vibes of, hey, I'm here to help. If you have a book, let me know about it. And then I'll dig into it a little bit. I tend to have a fairly low bar in terms of like a review process because
Hmm.
I think that's kind of a challenge in and of itself. But I do say, I don't share books that have obviously AI art
Hmm.
because I am also of the camp of um, I don't think that we should do that personally. If you're putting, hundreds of hours into a book, to have something where you could talk to an artist to do it for you or make something yourself, the amount of time that it'd probably take to do that would be as significant as people think. So that's probably one of the main areas where I say no, I don't support that
Okay.
personally. Um, but yeah, just trying to find ways of getting into people's socials and getting the word out that I'm here to help and yeah, it's pretty cool to see like the site gets regularly like a few thousand, views a month,
Heck yeah.
which is pretty friggin' sweet. And yeah, I'm pretty optimistic about the future. There's stuff coming down the pipe that hopefully will even ramp that up further and so getting more people to come to the site to check out the books, but then also getting more authors to showcase their books and finding creative ways to do that.
That is super awesome. So tell us about you have kind of practical guides and resources for authors at every stage. What kind of resources do you have to offer people?
Good question. So it's a lot of as I find things that I find challenging, I learn how to address that challenge and then write about it. That tends to be my process. So if you see me write something like, for example, I wrote a guide of tips and tricks for growing on social media. Why I wrote that was I was finding it challenging to grow on social media, and so I was like, okay, I got to spend some time to figure this out. And so I wrote up a guide. I touched base with some other creatives in the space to try and pick their brains a bit. And so that's kind of one of the ways I go about it. But I don't have a specific focus as far as that goes, because I've written, guides on, how to grow on social media, how
Hmm.
to start writing, how to do some project management stuff. It's kind of a little bit all over the place, but hopefully over time it'll build out to, being parts of the whole process, all the way from your initial idea, initial drafts to the actual revisioning work to publishing and then marketing. It's kind of like the big picture of slowly filling in the gaps along the way.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean there are a lot of people out there that can definitely use that advice. StoryForge alone, we have 6,000 something users. all of them are prospective authors. So, all the resources out there. I mean, that's just us. You got people on Wattpad, Campfire, whoever else. Uh, Everyone needs a little bit of advice. No one can do it themselves. They need to learn. But the one thing that you touched on that I thought was interesting, the social media stuff. Um, this is kind of like the advent of book talk and whatnot. But does it feel like can you really even be an author these days if you aren't also trying to be like an influencer or a social media marketing person? Like, doesn't it just feel like we've been pushed into this area where if you're not constantly marketing yourself, what are you even doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say if you want to reach more than a handful of people, you're probably going to have to be on social media in some way or form.
Hmm.
Um, the platforms that, like, say, for example, if you put your book on Amazon, they will probably not advertise your book until you get to a certain threshold. And then, maybe if you're, top 10 of a certain category, then maybe they'll show your book somewhere. But for the most part, if you put it up there, I don't know if anyone will really see it unless you tell someone. And so, yeah, you could probably convince, your friends and family. But then if you want to go beyond that, you're going to have to do some form of marketing, some form of social media. Um, I mean, maybe people have found a way to get around that, but in my experience thus far, even with getting people to, notice the website, it's
Hmm.
like the organic growth and the social media aspect is a huge part of what I spend my time on, which is also part of why I'm doing what I'm doing is that I am talking with other authors and even experiencing it myself. Um, so much of my time is spent in trying to get the word out about the thing that I don't have as much time to spend on the thing. So, like in this
Hmm.
example, it'd be working on, the podcast that I do or the writing that I'm doing. But I hope that by doing it for other people, that then they have more time to do the creative part
Yeah.
of their work and they can focus less on social media. But yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I was gonna say,
uh
Beatrice, this probably rings home to you.
I my little heart is like shrinking and shriveling. I have had I've basically like posted everything that I write online my entire life. I think I started in like 2012. And I have been marketing myself as an author since from the very beginning. And it has affected my mental health a lot. And it's, I actually have, I always talk about everything that I do in therapy in every episode podcast. I'm so sorry. I have a lot of issues. But one of the things that has been the most challenging part of the whole like writing process and the creative process as a whole with my books has been finding that balance and finding even like internal motivation to create even if the people are not there right away because of how much effort I have put into marketing, especially right now with the specific project I have is the first time that I am actually trying to do everything in English. I usually do everything in Spanish, and starting from scratch with not having an audience built in the language that I'm using right now has knowing that I was used to an audience already in another language and everything has been extremely challenging for my creative process, and I don't think it's something that people realize. A lot of people say like think I guess oh, you write the book and then you market it, and those things are completely different, and they don't realize that number one, if you try to market yourself only after the book is released, you are not going to build that kind of like cushion of people that are already interested in the project before it releases. And it's going to take longer and it's a mess, but also a lot of the times you and well, I mean me personally, like I kind of like have to catch myself and be like, I am getting unmotivated because I'm not reaching people, but that is influencing a creative process that I am ultimately doing for myself because I
Mm.
love writing. I love the message that I want to transmit with the story, and I'm very passionate about it. And it has been something extremely challenging to balance, and it has affected me a lot. So, you taking the initiative of helping people, even if it's with a little grain of sand, so that process is not as daunting as it already is, it means a lot. I think obviously means a lot for other people, but it means a lot for me personally because I it has affected my mental health. I even like stopped writing for years because I didn't know how to deal with it. And
Hmm.
it's something that probably people that are not in creative like parts of life and like that are not like artists or like writers or anything don't realize how mentally taxing all of these extra things that we have to do as authors, as creators, in order to put ourselves out there. Because ultimately, yeah, we're creating for ourselves, but we would really like if people see it because we also, there's a lot of part of creation that like we want to transmit something. We're passionate about something and like we want people to share this passion with us. And I also see that people sometimes see it like they frown upon it, like, oh, you're not creating just for the love of creating. You want to do it for other people. I want to celebrate this message, this thing with others. Like I if not, I wouldn't be trying to publish the book in the first place. Especially if it has like again, everything that I write is very emotional, it has a lot of messages and stuff. So it's like if I want to say for example, like, hey, don't look for things outside of yourself to fill your life and the void that you feel inside because that's not going to fulfill you. Because that's what the book I'm writing is about. I do want to make sure that I am giving people opportunity to reach it and see if they resonate with it, and then maybe I can even help someone. So yeah, I'm very passionate about this topic. So I'm very happy you're doing it. Long story
Indeed.
short.
Indeed. Yeah, no, I think that's exactly it is like there's a really great video on YouTube. I'm going to say the name wrong probably, but I think it was called "The Death of the Follower," um, or "The Death of Subscriber" by Jack Conte, who's like the CEO of Patreon. Um, he did a really good video about that, about how over time, over like the last few decades, there's really been a shift of um, I'm a creative, I want to share with the world. I put my stuff on the internet, people can, engage with it, to more recently where the ranking system is the thing that he says is kind of like the pivot point of where we as creatives are shifting from, creating because we love to create to I'm creating something that I know will trend well or, get
Mhm.
picked up by the algorithm or will, take off in some way and how yeah like I definitely have felt that too like I do art on the side and it's like I create something that I think is really cool. I want to share it with people, but if I didn't post it at the right time, I didn't use the right
Yeah.
keywords, I didn't use the right hashtag, it's like maybe people don't even see it. And
Hmm.
it's like that's really hard as a creative person. And it's like yeah I stopped doing art because I'm like well no one's going to see it, well then why am I doing it? And yeah, it's like, as you say, people will say, oh, we'll do it for the, the love of it. It's like, I still enjoy doing art, but I want to share it. And so I think part of what I'm doing with the Creative Writing Wizard is like, people have stories that they've written and they want people to read it. Like they wouldn't have shared it if they didn't want anyone to read it. Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
Ah,
So yeah, exactly. I think, and hopefully I'm helpful in that process. And I mean, I've seen a lot of activity on the site, and I've started a Patreon, or not, correction, I started a podcast to help highlight authors, and there's other projects I'm doing, but the core of it is like I want to help indie authors to get their books into people's hands, to have readers to engage with their stuff. Because yeah, I mean, I think that's at the end of the day, I think authors just want people to enjoy their stories.
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, you say yourself, I mean that's why what you're doing is so important. Just because of all the I don't really necessarily want to call it noise, but there's just so much out there. So we got Facebook, we got Instagram, we got Threads, we got TikTok, we got X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it,
blue
Pinterest,
sky.
Blue Sky, Mastodon, LinkedIn. I There's probably more, but I mean that's at least nine major social networks that you as a person are competing with everyone. I hate to say competing. You're not competing against people, you're competing against the algorithm to be found. And if someone is better at writing a post that the algorithm likes, they're more likely to be found versus, me who doesn't write great, social creative. That's why Beatrice is our director of social media and I am not.
Yay!
Yeah,
And the only reason why I learned how to do marketing was because I was writing.
yeah,
So it's pretty crazy.
yeah. So what you do in helping people shortcut that in a way, I think is really important and it really helps the indie writing community. So to anyone out there listening, um, we'll give Glenn a chance to plug everything at the end, but make sure you look down in the description, creativewritingwizard.com. Check it out. You're doing really good things for the indie community, and know, I think everyone that you've helped is probably very grateful.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope so. I think the hope is that, as I get better at social media, that helps me increase my reach for other authors, and then
Hmm.
they don't have to try and figure that out as much. But if they do want to figure it out, I'm also writing guides as I go, and I in my day job I do like data analysis, so I'm looking backwards over time to see what's working well. Um, and so then hopefully in that way, if people want to take that on, they can do that themselves. But yeah, it's like writing by itself is already tough.
Hmm.
To then add on marketing for yourself is a whole other thing that if we could just remove that piece and let people focus on just write the book,
Yeah.
I think we'd be a happier place as as authors.
Do you
Hell
think that
yeah.
do you think that's maybe why a lot of people want to go the traditional big publishing route is because they don't want to have to get big on book talk to have their book sell?
Yeah, I think that's probably uh, a a pretty big driver of the big five or like the traditional
Hmm.
publishing companies. The unfortunate thing that I don't know if everyone realizes is that smaller presses or smaller publishers they actually might still have you do your own marketing.
Hmm.
They might help to a certain degree, and even some of the big five, I've heard stories where I don't want to say any names because I do eventually want to be published myself. But just to say that um, even the big ones will have you doing some form of,
Hmm.
social media. And they like even in some of the emails I've seen to agents where like people have to refer to how big of a platform do you already have.
Yeah.
And it's like it's kind of bonkers in a way, but I understand the business side of it. But just to say that, yeah, like it is a pro to go with traditional because they tend to help in the marketing department. They're more motivated to do it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they will, which
Yeah.
is, sorry if that's news to you. I'm sorry if that's disheartening. But hopefully having that news now before you spend 2 years, trying to find an agent, then get it published, and then they tell you, oh, by the way, you still have to market your own book.
Hmm.
Um, I that was a shock to me, to be honest. And I think people need to understand that yes, traditional publishers will help you, especially in the editing and the cover art. That's like the main things that they do, which is a sizable amount of money. Like we're talking like
Hmm.
between $2,000 to $10,000 on the lower end to have those things done. So it is a help that they do, but there's still a chunk of work that you'll probably have to end up doing yourself,
Yeah.
which is tough.
Yeah. I've seen like some articles and some social media posts that people are they're finding that the some of the bigger publishers and even some of the smaller guys are looking for people who already have that platform so they don't have to do marketing. And at that point, like who actually needs who here? Like, does the writer need big publishing or does big publishing need the writer? And it's just I don't know.
It's so disheartening as someone that I have previously, I cannot name names. I legally can, but I'm going to avoid. I got scouted by a big agency because I went semi-viral. Like in TikTok, it wasn't like that bad. My following is not big, but it was a burst that was very quick. And I was told by someone inside that agency that that was the only reason,
Hmm.
not my book, not the story that I wanted to tell, just that one of the videos that I did was funny and it skyrocketed and it got uh, an influx that was very out of the blue for the influx of readers that I had in that platform. And they were like, we want that. We want you to keep doing that. We want you because of your TikToks. And it's like, do you even know what the book is about? Oh, sure, you can tell us what it's about, but we want you to keep doing TikTok so people keep coming. And at the end, it didn't work. And at the end, I learned that I signed at the time because, like that desperation of like this very big thing wants me no matter what the cost is. And at the end, I learned the hard way that they definitely didn't have my best interest of the book in mind. And I'm very happy to have my rights back. And now being working to self-publish it, it's something that when I tell people, they really they get taken aback because it's like, wow, I thought they have a lot of money, like they do their nope. And I also have had friends that have been in Big Five. I always say friends in Big Five, very like not specific, just
Yeah.
in case. But I have had people that have experienced that with their own books, that the publisher said, yeah, we're going to promote it for one Instagram post the first week. The rest, if you want to sell, is on you. But if you don't sell, we're not going to sign you again. And it's like,
Yeah.
wow, I thought you were like the biggest of this particular thing. Excuse me.
Yeah.
It's
Everyone
really
sees
harsh.
what they do for like Stephen King and Lee Bardot and all the big writers like, oh yeah, they're gonna do that for me. No, you're someone that they found on TikTok. There's someone they found on X. Is your book good? Yeah, probably, but you have to work a heck of a lot harder to promote that and get a good return on investment. So it's really kind of crappy.
Yeah, which is kind of why I understand when people decide to go self-publish is like to just not deal with that. And it's like accept, well, if I'm going to market anyway, at least I'll have the control.
Hmm.
And not to like not to bash on all publishers because there are indie publishers and indie presses that
Oh
do
yeah.
work really hard
Oh yeah,
for their
absolutely.
authors. I was talking to one the other day. I think it was Dragonbone Publishing. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But they're a small indie publisher where they're helping to promote books and it's like that's really cool. I hope to make more connections like that and to find more who are like actually legit trying to help authors.
Hmm.
So like either if it's funding part of the costs that go into it or helping to get the books out, there are good publishers out there. But yeah, it's tricky to navigate. Um, and I think as I've been getting more knowledge in terms of what's going on in the publishing world, it's certainly been, eye-opening in a lot of ways, which is just reinforcing that the work that I'm doing is important and there's
Hmm.
other people I'm working with. And it's like, yeah, this is an issue, and I think we can do something about it collectively and individually.
Yeah, absolutely. That is exactly why StoryForge exists, because we want to do something about the publishing industry. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of good ones out there that are really looking out for their authors and trying to help that creative vision come to life and doing that marketing. But unfortunately, a lot of them are the smaller ones, and their marketing is going to be limited because they're not Barnes and Noble. They're not, Schuler, Penguin, Tor, whoever. Nothing against them. They have all the money, and some of the smaller ones, like we talked to the Laughing Man Publishing House. They they publish, but they don't have a ton of money for marketing and stuff like that. So they do what they can for their authors, and I think that's great. But all right, I think we're getting close to wrapping up here. So Glenn, I'm gonna ask you one more question. I know you have a lot of advice, and I don't want you to give away your best stuff, but what's one of the best pieces of advice you can give someone who is looking to succeed as an independent author?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Putting you on the
Well,
spot there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
should have prepped you for that one. My bad.
no, it's all good. It's more authentic that way. Um, yeah, I'll reiterate something I've said before, and it's kind of a paraphrase of that video I referenced, but um, I think something that's important, especially as we, creatives share stuff on social media, that we need to separate our success on social media with our personal worth. I think there's a lot of
Mhm.
times where, as creatives, when we put something out there, if it's art, music, writing, whatever, If it doesn't get, 100 likes or 50 comments or whatever, then we think that what we're creating isn't valuable and that we aren't valuable. So the encouragement side is to remember that we as people are valuable, that what we have to share is valuable, and that there's that piece of social media isn't sharing it for whatever reason. There's strategies of how to do that differently, but don't associate your value to how well you succeed, quote unquote, on social media. Because that's something that I've done in the past and it sucks. And it really takes that creative energy out of you. But as soon as I was able to disassociate those two things, I feel like I've been able to be more creative and to keep creating, even though, maybe I shared something, it got 2 likes on social media. I can separate that from, no, what I have to say is important. People do resonate well with it. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing and, figure it out as I go.
Beautifully said.
Wow.
All right. So Glenn, we appreciate you being on the show. Tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, so you've already mentioned my website is www.creativewritingwizard.com. You can also connect with me on pretty much most of the social media sites with my name. So at Glen Weatherhead, that's one N for Glenn because you can spell it with two in some circumstances. Yeah, and if you go to my website, I have all my other links to like the podcast that I'm doing. We just launched an indie creative community, so there's information on the website about that. Yeah, come find me. I'm always open for if you have any questions around what I'm doing, if there's things I can do to help. My DMs are open if that's, you need someone to talk to because it's a wild world out there and there's a lot of stuff going on. And yeah, I think people can, find me and I'll help where I can.
And we can vouch for that. Our quality analyst found Glenn on Threads, I believe, and struck up a conversation. We're like, hey, you want to come on here? And he was like, sure. So, yep, find him wherever you can. Glen Weatherhead from Creative Ring Wizard. We very much appreciate you being on the show. We hope to talk to you again. And to everyone out there listening, we will see you at the Forge.
Bye.